Hi, this is Tom, and in this video what we're going to do is we are going to find the inverse function. So I'll show you how we do this, and I'm actually going to just give you a set of steps. The first one is replace. We're going to replace the f of x with y. 1. 2. Switch the x and y's. Switch the x and y's. 3. Solve for y. And then 4 is replace y with f inverse of x. Wow. Here we go. So let's try this. We're going to try this. Find the inverse. Find the inverse of f of x equals 2/3 x plus 2. Okay, here we go. So the first step is, so I'll label our steps. Let's do that. 1, replace f of x with y. So now I have y equals 2/3 x plus 2. Okay, step 2, switch the x's and y's. Okay, so the y becomes an x, I have 2/3, the x becomes the y, and a plus 2. Solve for y. So on step 3, let's do this. I'm going to bring this down, just rewrite it for a moment. I'm going to start by subtracting the 2 from both sides. So I have, I'll write it this way, negative 2 plus x equals 2/3 y. And just to kind of clean things up, I'm going to write this as an x minus 2 equals 2/3 y. And then my next step is we want to get y by itself, so I have to multiply the right side by the fraction of 3/2. So that means I have to do the exact same thing on the other side of the equation. And so if we do that, let's clean this up now. I now have 3/2x minus, now remember I have to distribute the 3/2. So notice those 2's are going to cancel, so I'm going to have a minus 3 equals y. And then the last step, step 4 says replace the y with f inverse. So I write it as f inverse of x equals 3/2 x minus 3. Now, remember earlier what we said. We said that if this is really the inverse, then I should put something in and know what and get something out and know what I'm going to get out. So let's check. Let's do this. Let's try 6. Let's try f of 6. Okay, so this says, if I put it in my first equation, I go 2/3 times 6 plus 2. So this is going to be 4 plus 2, so that's going to give me a 6. So in other words, I put a 6 in, I got a 6 out. Okay? Now, if I put into, actually that's probably not a very good choice. Let's try different. Let's do this instead. I'm sorry about that. This is kind of fun to see how it works. Let's try 9. How about 9 instead? Let's try 9. So I put in a 9, I get 2/3 times a 9 plus 2. So this is going to give me a 6 plus 2, that's an 8. So in other words, my ordered pair was I started with a 9 and I got out an 8. Now, if my inverse really works, that means I should start with the 8 and end with the 9. So let's check. So if I take f of 8 this is going to give me, now I use my inverse function. So I use 3 over 2 times 8 minus 3. This is going to, let's see, notice that 2 is reduce the 8 to a 4. So 4 times 3, that's 12 minus 3, and that's 9. Just as we expected. We put in the 8, we returned the 9. Now, let's do one more thing. Let's try this. Let's try composing the functions. So what if I take f of f inverse of x, and then we're also going to try f of, f inverse of f of x. And let's think about this. This says that if I put in whatever f inverse is into f, I should get back out where I started. Well, you start with an x. So if this really works, then we should end with an x. Now that might have been a little bit quick, but that's also the definition. So let's see how this works. If I take f and I put f inverse into it, well, that's 3 halves x minus 3. And now I put 3 halves x minus 3 into the original f. Well, that's 2/3 times 3 over 2x minus 3 plus, I add a 2. Okay, so now I distribute the 2/3, so I'm going to get a 1x, and then a minus 2 plus 2, and look at that, sure enough, I get an x. Meaning if I put an x into the problem, I get an x back out. Because think about, if you have, let me re-explain this. If I started out with an x, and then I ran it through f, I should get f of x, which we also call y. Now on the inverse problem, I'm going to start with the y, and then I'm going to put it into the f inverse, which is I'm going to put the y in, and what would we expect back out? Well, we would expect to get an x. So it also works the other way. Let's say I start with f inverse, f of x. This says, take f inverse, and I substitute f of x. Well, that was 2/3 x plus 2. So now I put this whole piece into the inverse. Well, that's 3 halves times x. Well, x is now 2/3 x plus 2 minus a 3. I distribute the 3 halves. That's going to give me a 1x plus a 3 minus a 3, and there it is. So because of those compositions, both times you get out an x, we know that we have found the correct inverse. Thanks for watching.